Hey, we have a yes.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good enough. Thank you, Anonymous. We have a yes. Then I will just continue. Okay, so or start over again. So data leakage prevention is it's happening. People send information to the wrong persons, accidentally or unaware. However, it's done. And nowadays, we also have to deal with the Privacy Act and GDPR. So that's the European thing on data protection and privacy. So we have to be a bit careful on how we share corporate data inside and outside of our organizations. So DLP will help you with reducing the number of those accidents. And the second thing is it will create awareness. I will show you in a minute on what that looks like, on creating the awareness of when a user tries to send out sensitive data, and then what can they do with it. And finally, and I think that's important both for the organization and for the well-being of your IT people, it will actually put IT back in control on corporate data. Now it is like as soon as your attachment leaves your file server and it sits as an attachment in an email, then IT can no longer be responsible for the content that sits in that email. So I think this is a very big advantage. Sorry for that, I had to take a sip of water. Okay, so sensitive data. What is sensitive data? Well, that is a long list, and that list is probably different for every organization. But I think a couple of the things that are in here are apply to all organizations, like credit card numbers, bank account information, social security numbers. Those are not things that you should put out on the World Wide Web for everybody to access information like that. So on the dots, think about your own corporate data that would meet the criteria for being sensitive data. We'll have a look later on how you define what is sensitive data in your organization. So what does that look like for an end user when he or she tries to do that? So this is a very simple example where somebody tries to send credit card numbers in an email to somebody outside of the organization. And the warning is, the policy tip is that recipient isn't authorized to receive this type of information. And then if you look closely, you have that little word override. So this sender can click override, and then the sender must specify a reason, and that reason is being logged. I can also replace, as an admin, that override by an approval button. And then an approval workflow will start where a manager or whoever needs to approve that you send this email to somebody outside of the organization. Or I can just prohibit it. Just say, you cannot do that. Sorry. So those are basically the three options. I could also just do the policy tip and do nothing. Actually, I think that's a good starting point. That is creating user awareness, that you just say isn't authorized to receive this type of email information because it contains credit card numbers, and you still allow people to send it. And then a couple of weeks later, you tighten up your security and you use the override thing, and then you tighten it up a little bit more a couple of weeks later, and you use the approval one, and then you tighten it up a little bit stronger in a couple of weeks, and you just prohibit that people send this information. Don't throw everything at once to your end users. They will just panic. In Outlook on the web, it works exactly the same. So in Outlook on your Android or iOS device, it will look exactly the same. You cannot do it from there either because, hey, everything is connected to the Office 365 platform. And those credit card numbers, with or without the spaces, they will be recognized by the system. Also in Word documents, it works. And the properties of this Word document that sits on SharePoint, it will also see that the item contains the following sensitive information, credit card numbers. So it works throughout the platform. It will work in Teams. It will work in Word, in Excel, in email, in everything that has to do with Office 365. This will work if you implement, of course, such policies. So from the admin experience, this is what a rule, a policy like this would look like. So I just made the screenshot of the policy settings where you say, hey, conditions, sensitive info types, credit card number, IP address, Swift code. So Microsoft has a bunch of standard sensitive info types. So credit card number is one of them, IP address is one of them, Swift code is one of them, all kinds of social security numbers, and you can add your own sensitive info types as well. But there's already a long list available out of the box. And then we have the actions, so restrict access to the content, notify users with email and policy tips, and in this situation, send incident reports to administrator. And there you can specify the mail address of the specific administrator who is responsible for this. That may be your security admin or your security officer or whatever. So this is basically what the admin experience on such a DLP policy would look like. I see no questions so far. Everybody can see it, so I'm just moving on. Every now and then I need to check the Q&A. So we can also protect corporate data when it sits in specific applications. We call those applications enlightened applications. So then we talk about app protection. So I like this example. So this is Outlook on my mobile device, and I received an email from my colleague, Jeroen. So that's internal, that is within our organization. And then I try to copy that text and paste it on the same mobile phone, on my same Android phone, to a Gmail address. And then I get this message: your organization's data cannot be pasted here. So on my personal device, I have my personal email in Gmail, and I have my business email in Outlook, and I cannot copy paste data from corporate managed applications to my private applications. I think that is great because people are a little bit afraid on the word of mobile device management. I don't call it mobile device management. I call it mobile data management, because we are, as an IT admin, I'm not interested in your device. I'm only interested in having control of corporate data that sits on your device. You can do with your device whatever you want. I don't care. I only care what you can and cannot do with corporate data. And I think this is a brilliant example of a very simple policy where a user is just not capable of copy-paste information out of one email client into another email client, because that other email client is not managed by the organization. What does that look like from the admin experience? Well, actually pretty simple. It's an Intune app protection policy. And I put the orange arrow at the restrict, cut, copy, paste between other apps. And then this is a protection policy applied to Outlook. So it's pretty simple. Of course, if you make a lot of these policies, it can become kind of spaghetti. So my advice is always less is more. Don't do everything all at once, and certainly what is very, very important is that you explain to your users why you are doing it, how you are doing it, and what you are doing, so that they understand what is going on. Because if the user just sees your organization's data cannot be pasted here, guess what that user is going to do? He's going to call you, upset. Hey, what are you doing? Da, 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 da. So you better communicate on forehand what you are planning to do, and say that it's not your decision. It should be a business decision, and you're just the IT guy who enforces such a policy. You push the buttons, you go into the portals and make the settings, but you don't invent the settings. There is a question. Let me see that. No, I mean, I have examples that will come on later. So the question here is, if the user takes a screenshot, is that blocked? In this situation, I don't think so, but there are situations where you actually cannot make a screen clipping. I will come to that later. And of course, still that is not 100% proof, because if you have it on your screen, you can have another mobile device and make a picture of your screen. So we're not talking about 100% tight security. This is just raising the bar. So it's not 100%. You can always take a picture. In the old days, I would say, hey, pick up your monitor, put it on the Xerox machine, and make a copy. And then you have at least you have the information. Is that an answer to your question? Was Denzel? I think so. So let's move on here. So I can take that a step further, and I can say, oh, one more question. I'm scrolling down. What about the same mobile device? Yeah, well, as I said, in this situation, because I created that, let's move this back. In this situation, I'm not sure. I could make a setting. I'm sure about that. I can make a setting on my Android phone or an iOS phone that as soon as you have a corporate managed app as active, you cannot make a screenshot. And then still you can put out another device out of your pocket and take a picture of your screen. But on the granularity, you almost anything is possible. So those credit card numbers and stuff like that, that is already available in those long lists that Microsoft provide, but you probably have your own organizational sensitive data, and you can define those for yourself. So I created a sensitivity label here, and I'm saying in that label that if a document contains the letters project ABC, encrypt that file or that email and apply predefined access. Hey, that's great. So a user is just working on that project, and somewhere in that Word document it has project ABC, and immediately that file will be encrypted, and only people on the access control list can have access to that file automatically. So that works in an email. That's the picture on the left, and then on the right we have the same thing in a Word document with the same letters. Letters are not visible here, but trust me, Project ABC sits in that Word document. And also over here, initially, this is, in my opinion, when we talk user adoption, this is initially about user awareness. So on the permissions, don't be too restrictive right from the start. Just show them the tips and explain them why we are working towards tightening up security a little bit more. And then the next step is that you start restricting who they can send it to and restricting access, like, hey, I can send it to you, but you can only open it in a browser and you have read-only permissions and stuff like that, and you cannot make the screenshot because we can combine everything in that. The great thing about this is if you have the proper licenses for this, you can even do this on your current file servers. So you can have an engine scanning your file server, and all the documents that would contain the letters project ABC, all those documents will be encrypted. Of course, if you have a big file server, it's kind of heavy load on your file server, so don't run that on Tuesday morning, but run the tool on Friday evening and during the weekend, because as you can imagine, picking up all those files, browsing through all those files and detecting that, and then applying encryption on all of those files, that will be very heavy on your disk, your CPU, and your RAM. So what does this look like if you create this? Actually, it's also pretty straightforward. You have to give your sensitivity label a name, and then a description, what the users can see, a name for yourself, and then you, oh, that was a bit too quick. Let's go back to previous. And then your encryption type. So this is part of Azure Information Protection, not really DLP. This is more Azure Information Protection because it's also involving encryption. And then with Azure Information Protection, you decide, you build that access control list. And I think the great thing about building that access control list, who has access to this specific document, that one, that access control list travels with the document. So wherever the document goes, if it goes, excuse me, I'm muting for 2 seconds. Yeah, that's better. If that project sits as a document sits as an attachment in a email, then still only people that are on that access control list will be able to open that attachment. They will have to authenticate. And if they are not on there, the document will not open. So wherever the document sits, on a USB drive, on an email, on a portable hard drive, on your local PC. So I think for IT admins, that is great, because that means you're no longer just depending on the security on your file server. Because nowadays, a lot of data doesn't sit on your file server. It sits on all kind of devices of your users and your customers and your partners, and wherever it sits. So think about the flexibility of that. So here I have the example of an encrypted email. So I send an encrypted email out of my Office 365 subscription to an email address in Gmail. So this is the familiar screenshot from my Gmail account. And I received that message, but you see that I'm actually not receiving the message. I receive kind of a notification that I received a message. And the message cannot be opened on the Google platform. That's interesting. But you see there the button, read the message with the orange arrow sitting next to it. If I click on that button, this is what happens. Look at the URL. You are being redirected to Office 365, so the secure environment of Microsoft, and that is where you can read that email. And to come back to Denzel's question on the screenshot, if you apply this policy, the do not forward policy, which is, by the way, an out-of-the-box policy. Recipients can't forward, print, or copy content. In this situation, you cannot make a screenshot. You also cannot make a partial screenshot. It just wouldn't work. As soon as you enable that, the whole screen will go black. And if you select text to copy it, you can try that, but if you right-click on your mouse, the copy option is grayed out. And if this is an email, the forward button is grayed out. If you want to print or save the file, those options are grayed out. So you just cannot do it, including the screenshots. And then again, take your mobile device, make a picture of your screen, and there you have your screenshot. So watertight, no, but it's increasing your security footprint. So I'm just going to over here. This was just to give you an impression. I mean, there is way more out there, but in 25 minutes, I don't want to overwhelm you. You got kind of an impression of what is possible in data leakage prevention and a little bit on Azure information protection. So it's all about corporate data. Where does it go and how can you protect that? And how can you be compliant with things like GDPR and Privacy Act and whatever in your country you have to deal with? Because in all of the countries around the world, we have to deal with compliance, and that applies to organizations, but that also applies to individual users. So hit me with your questions. You still have time to submit some questions. I'm just going to click next because there is a next slide as well. Oh, first I want to thank you, of course, for your precious time on this Thursday morning, April 30. So another month gone. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to look at some best practices for teams. As you may know, Teams is currently very popular because everybody's working from home, and Teams is a pretty good application to enable all those remote workers to at least be able to communicate with each other and collaborate a little bit with each other, as they are not sitting in their well-known office spaces. So we're looking at some best practices on that. That's 2 weeks from now, same time, same place. And then, of course, hey, we are all around. We are all around. So I have only one more thing to say to you because there's no questions coming in. Be safe, work from home whenever possible, and enjoy the month of May, which is starting tomorrow. Thank you for your time. So we have a question on, can this be done with standard file servers? If you have the appropriate licenses, there is an agent that you can download from the Microsoft Office 365 platform. You install that agent on your file server. It will work with a feature that is already available in your Windows Server product. And then that engine can run on any standard file server as long as it's a Windows file server. Is that an answer to your question? So that's applying labeling to files that are already on your file server. If you want to do that, I really recommend cleaning up your file server first. Really get rid of all that old stuff that is sitting there. Everything that's older than 4 years. What's the use of classifying that data? It's probably only valid for like 5% of your data to actually apply sensitivity labels and encryption on that, and not everything in your file server. How do you differentiate between a valid link to a document and a... So that's another topic that's part of the question here on clicking on a link to a document and a hacker spoofing a link. There is a tool called Office 365 ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. And there is a feature in there that is called safe links. And that means that each and every time a user clicks a link in an email or in an Office document or on SharePoint or wherever, that link is being validated first by Microsoft. And they have a huge database of bad websites and stuff like that. So that's not part of the DLP, of data leakage prevention. That's more part of threat protection. We will definitely have a webinar on that soon as well, or maybe we had it a couple of months ago. But the tool you need for that is ATP. And then we have another, okay. If so, what versions? Standard file servers, what versions? Windows file servers. Server 2012, R2 and up. So server 2012, 2016, 2019, anything that smells like a Windows file server, it has to have the file server role installed on it. That will work. Okay, I think we're done. No more coming in. Again, thank you very much. Hope to see you. Let's go to the previous slide one more time. There will be some announcements on this one in the coming 14 days on LinkedIn, and please register and be there for some best practices in Teams in a nutshell in another 35 minutes or so. Again, thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.